All right, hey, this is Hillside Solutions. We're an eco-friendly waste hauler, and we're partnered with your business, office, school, organization on some recycling and composting, okay? So this is information on how you can get plugged into that and start doing it the right way. All right, so we gotta lay down some data to get things started. The average American, turns out, produces 4.3 pounds of trash a day. That's according to the EPA. So each one of us in America, 4.3 pounds of trash a day. So while we're listening to this, think to yourself, why do we produce this much? Do we need to produce this much? And where does it go? Okay, so we're gonna tackle some of those things throughout this, all right? And one of the things that's wonderful, sustainability is a great thing, right? Everybody loves sustainability. It's a gigantic industry with all kinds of different facets. And there's some really complicated stuff like how do solar panels work? And what does carbon footprint mean? And how do I get rid of it and all that stuff? But the cool thing about solid waste and sustainability within solid waste is that we all get to participate in it because we all make 4.3 pounds of trash a day. So this is something that, if we learn the right way how to treat our materials, we can make a difference. I don't know how to make a difference in solar panels, so I don't know what anything about it, but I know how to recycle, I know how to compost, and I'm gonna teach you how to do that too. So here in Omaha, Nebraska, in modern era, there's more than just 1 or 2 containers that you can separate your stuff into. There's now upwards of 6 different containers, okay, and how you can separate your materials and make sure they do things other than just go to the landfill. So we're gonna talk about all those. And depending on your organization, the size and what services you're signed up for, you may or may not be participating in all of these, okay? So you gotta check with your leadership, your management, know which ones you're doing, but assuming you're doing all of them, we're gonna go through all of it. All right, another thing we gotta get past, this concept, this myth that trash equals waste. That is a misconception. So it turns out that waste is a human invention. All other creatures on the planet have figured out a way to live a zero waste lifestyle except us. So in reality, our waste is actually a resource. So instead of putting it in a landfill and burying it, forgetting about it, it's like the same thing as taking the money out of your pocket and putting it in a hole and forgetting about it. Let's treat that stuff like it's money. Let's treat that stuff like it's jobs. Let's treat that stuff like it's opportunities and products, okay? How do we do that? Well, the solution is going zero waste. And what does zero waste mean? The first thing you need to know about zero waste is it's not zero. Turns out 10% or less of your trash would be landfilled or burned, okay, to meet that zero waste criteria. Another way of saying that, of all the stuff that you produce and consume, 90% or more of it needs to be reduced, recycled, or reused in some fashion, okay? So, another myth we need to get past before we get much further into all this, recycling goes to the landfill. You probably heard some version of this. You thought this. You saw some truck pick up trash and recycling at the same time. So let's talk about that for a second, okay? I have good news for you. The reality is that in Omaha, recycling is still alive and well, asterisk, if you do it the right way. We're going to talk about the right way. Of course, the solution is recycle right. Now, let's talk about recycling. What you see here is residential recycling. Maybe you live within Omaha and you have this green bin at home. We call that single stream recycling, which means all the stuff that you recycle goes into one bin. Super easy and convenient, but when it comes to commercial organizations, there's 2 routes you can go. If you're a smaller business and you're using totes to collect your recycled materials like you see here in this picture, that's single stream, and you can continue doing single stream recycling using totes if you're that kind of volume. Now, if you're a larger organization and you're using dumpsters to collect your stuff, that's when you have to get into a new system. Here's the new system, dual stream, okay? So what we have is one stream for fibers, which is gonna be your paper and your cardboard, and you're gonna have another dumpster container for your containers, what we call the container stream, which is plastics, metals, and energy bags. We'll talk about energy bags. Another big thing that's changed with recycling that you really need to get on board with is no more plastic bags in the dumpsters or totes that we service. This goes for other haulers too. Plastic bags, when they go to a recycling facility, First Star is where we take our stuff, and First Star is the only legitimate place to take mixed commingled material to in the Omaha area. When that happens, that stuff just goes to the landfill. So you can collect it in-house in a plastic bag, but you're just going to need to empty that into the dumpster or tote that we service and empty and ensure that that stuff actually gets recycled. Another myth that we call wish cycling. What is wish cycling? Okay, so that's, let's say you have a hair dryer and it's mostly made out of plastic and you know, okay, plastic is recyclable. How about I recycle this hair dryer? That's wish cycling. You don't really know, but you think, and so you do it. This happens all the time everywhere, and turns out it's really bad. That's called contamination. Other contamination is like food and liquids. And when there's too much food, liquids, and wrong recycled material, lots of stuff just ends up going to the landfill. Okay? So we got to clean that up and figure out what is and isn't recyclable. So the solution is follow these rules, and there's some simple things. All right? I'm going to make it really, really simple for you. The first thing is stop contaminating. The golden rule number 1 for that is dry and empty. So imagine a pop bottle, okay? And you want to recycle that. You want to make sure that you have that pop out of there. It doesn't have to be 100% dry, but if I can still take a gulp out of that pop, I need to empty that. Otherwise, if it has, let's say it's half full and you put that in the recycling container, it's going to pour out over other stuff and get sticky. The paper is going to get wet and it's not going to become recyclable, and other stuff's going to get sticky, and then it shows up and it may just get thrown in the landfill. Okay? Yogurt cup, imagine that. They can get pretty dirty. If there's some residue, that's fine. If you have the ability to wash it out, even better. But the main thing is I just don't want to be able to take a bite out of what's left. So dry and empty, that's the goal. And another thing to keep in mind is that there's people on the other end that collect this stuff. So when you send it to a recycling center, there's someone that has to separate all that stuff out. So you want to make sure that, when I want to touch this on the other end, am I okay with having someone, fumble through my stuff? Is it in a good enough condition to do that? So another thing, stop recycling. Golden rule number 2. When in doubt, throw it out. So going back to that plastic hair dryer, if you don't know if it's actually recyclable, it's better, and this sounds weird, it's better to just throw it in the landfill. Because when you recycle the wrong things, it causes problems, it's really costly, it messes stuff up. And the recycling streams in our modern day are sensitive enough that it's better to recycle less if we know it's the right stuff than just pile it on. Okay, so now we're going to break it down into some simple categories of things that are recyclable, okay? So the first one is paper. Paper's really easy. So mostly if it's not, you don't want anything that's wet or soiled, okay? Like if you spill your coffee on it, you wouldn't want to recycle it then. Things that are food related, like napkins or paper towels, not recyclable, they are compostable. And then, plastic screens and mailers and staples, all those things that you get generally associated with papers, that's fine. Office paper is fine, magazines fine. Paper's pretty easy. So the next one is cardboard. Cardboard's pretty simple. Nothing too wet or soiled, so like actually pizza box, for the most part, if it's in a decent enough condition, is recyclable or it's compostable. But for the most part, you want dry materials. Tapes, labels, staples in your cardboard boxes, that's totally fine. Here's something that's really important. Oh my goodness, people don't do this enough. Just flatten the cardboard. We get so many calls about our dumpster's full and it's actually some schmuck didn't break down the cardboard boxes so it just consumed everything. Do yourself and everybody else around you a favor, be a mature adult, flatten that, all right? So that's easy, cardboard's easy. And so those two items combined, when you're doing dual stream recycling, we call that the fiber stream. And we have a poster here that you can download on our website for free. You can see it right here, paper and cardboard. There you go on that. The next category, metals. So this is like your aluminum, your steel cans. You see here, you have aerosol cans. Those are fine as long as they're empty. You see things like your pop cans, your food cans. Again, the yam can is great, and some food syrup residue is okay. I just don't want to be able to have a yam bite out of that left. You'll see that there's some food residue on some of the items here, but just no food in of itself. Dry and empty as much as possible. All right, that gets us to, all the rest of that was easy, but now we're left with plastics, and plastics are complicated. So let's talk about how dumb plastics are. All plastics really want to get down into microplastics. And microplastics are everywhere. They're in our water streams, they're in our clothes, they're in our food supply, and I kid you not, they're swimming around our bloodstream right now. It's like the 1950s when everybody smoked and no one really knew what was going to happen, with the cancer wave. It's kind of like that. Like, we all got these microplastics everywhere and no one's really sure what's going to happen next to our health. Okay, I'm not saying we're all going to get cancer, but the point is they suck, all right? The other thing that sucks about plastics is the coding system that has been developed in order to talk about the different types of plastics. So these scientists and manufacturers came up with this way so that they could communicate to each other about, oh, this is this type of plastic and this is this type of plastic, okay? That system was never meant for the general public to try to wade through and understand. But yeah, this is what we have. This is the coding lexicon that we have in order to know which plastics are and aren't recyclable. So as you can see here in this graph, we have 7 different major types of plastics, 1 through 7, okay? And just because it has that triangle with the arrows around it, that doesn't necessarily mean it's recyclable, okay? And depending on where you live, some of these are and aren't easily recyclable. But I'm going to give you sort of the general lay of the land. For most places, and especially in Omaha, Nebraska, if it's a plastic that's labeled, and you can look at the bottom, and sometimes it has the number. If it's labeled 1, 2, or 5, that's a really easy to recycle plastic generally. 3s, 4s, 6s, and 7s, not so much. We're going to talk about what we can do with that. So this is what plastics number 1, 2, and 5 look like. So think hard, rigid, bulky, water bottles, milk cartons, laundry detergent bottles, things like that. There's a lot of material to work with, and recyclers love that stuff, okay? And specific to Omaha, they can take the bottle caps, and so be sure to leave those on if you have them. Aseptic containers, things like this, milk cartons, juice boxes, just make sure they're as empty as you can get them is preferable. Those are pretty easy. And so those combined, if you're doing dual stream recycling, we call that the container stream. So that's your metal cans, your plastic bottles, your rigid plastic containers. Okay, but the reality is that many plastics aren't easily recyclable. The solution we have for that is the hefty energy bag, okay? Or refusing those types of not easily recyclable plastics altogether. But anyway, so here's a hefty energy bag, okay? Maybe you've seen these around town, these orange bags that people are putting their materials into. I collected this stuff at home. You can see this in this photo. These are energy bag items, so soft plastics. You can think of soft, flexible plastics like a chip bag, to-go styrofoam stuff that restaurants give you, plastic utensils, a lot of just different food packaging and things like that. Things that aren't hard and rigid and big and bulky that recyclers like, but the stuff that usually falls through the cracks and it's low-grade material that previously, if you were to put this in your recycling container, would be considered contamination, but if it goes into an energy bag, it's magically now recyclable, okay? So here's another graph to look at the different categories like plastic pouches and food wrappers and plastic bags and liners, plastic to-go products, like straws, and all sorts of things, okay? And the poster we have on our website, Hillside Solutions, that's quick start. This is our energy bag poster, okay? So the 3 major lines is like styrofoams, soft flexible plastics, plastic lids, straws, utensils. That's an easy way to encapsulate it, summarize what's going on there. So earlier, I said no plastic bags in the recycling dumpster or tow. This is the exception to the rule. If it is an energy bag, if it's that's good to go. We want that in your recycling container tied up. Okay, moving on to a fun topic, composting. We're going to start off with this myth, and that is food safely turns to dirt in a landfill. And I don't know about you, but I used to be one of these people that believed that, let's say I had a lettuce, when it went to a landfill, it just safely, broke down into dirt and didn't cause any issue. That's what I thought. Super convenient to think that. Boy, was I wrong. We're all wrong. So wrong. I'm going to tell you how wrong we are so that we can be right, okay? So first off, we need to talk about how landfills work. So here's a landfill, right? They put down the trash for the day, yada, yada. At the end of the day, they're required by law to fill dirt on top and pack that in. That's a good idea. You don't want that stuff blowing around into neighboring communities and be able to smell that. But the problem is that daily cover creates what's called an anaerobic environment, which is a really fancy way of saying there's a lack of oxygen. It turns out it's really important to have oxygen hit that head of lettuce. And so when it doesn't hit that head of lettuce, research shows 10 to 25 years it can take a single head of lettuce to break down in a landfill. Okay? Meanwhile, anaerobic bacteria is eating at it, and they are putting off methane. Okay? Methane gas is up to, some research shows, 120 times more potent in the first year than CO2. Okay, so this is kind of a big deal. All right, some other things. When food waste goes into landfill, it produces methane. It also produces toxic sludge, which means all the water in our food waste mixes with all the other liquids in the landfill, and it creates a toxic sludge called leachate, and that can sometimes get into our waterways and mess stuff up. Okay, and it also consumes space. We want those landfills to exist as long as possible because we don't have to find another place to put a landfill. So those are the reasons, and of course the solution is, instead of sending it to landfill, you should compost, okay? So the benefits of composting, when you grow food from soil that's from the composting process, you have better tasting, healthier foods. You have less land erosion because that soil can hold in water much easier. And then you're fighting climate change because when you grow stuff with really healthy soil, it's sucking carbon out of the air, which is a bad thing, and it's putting it back into the soil, which is a good thing, okay? So if you compost at home, good for you. I have some exciting news for you. When you compost with us, it's a little different. At home, it's like food scraps from your kitchen in the form of vegetables, fruits, and then your yard waste. For the most part, there's some other things you can do, but that's the general gist of composting at home. When you compost with us, we have the area's only industrial scale composting facility. We can take all kinds of things, anything that's been alive once, we can break it down and turn it back into soil. So any and all food scraps, okay? Any and all food scraps, if it's food related, we'll take it, we'll break it down in the soil. Non-recyclable papers, so like some pizza boxes are recyclable, but if it's really mucked up, we can compost it. Paper towels from the bathroom, we can compost it. Paper napkins, paper plates, all sorts of things like that, okay? Yard waste, of course, and then random things like pet hair, human hair, tea bags, chopsticks. If it came from nature, we're going to turn it back into nature. So here's the poster we put together for the composting portion of it. The three major categories we like to think about it is food liquid, food-related paper, and compostable dishware, okay? So the big thing is no plastic, no metal, no glass in that stream. Now, there's flooding the market now, you see a lot of compostable dishware. So pictured here, stuff like, instead of plastic utensils, there's these utensils, single-use utensils that are made out of corn, for example, or a cup that looks like it's made out of plastic, but it's made out of a natural material, and it should be commercially composted. This can get a little confusing, so you have to be mindful and pay attention to the logos and the labeling to ensure, is this recyclable or is this compostable? And so some of the ways that you can do that is you look for the BPI logo, or it might say compostable on it somewhere. Here are some other logos that you can see generally on compostable stuff. And remember how I talked about how plastics are really dumb and that coding system 1 through 7 is really dumb? Well, if you see a 7 with the triangle arrows around it, just by itself, it lets you know that it's just some weird composite of different types of plastics put together, and it's generally not easily recyclable. But if it magically has PLA underneath that as well, that's to let you know that it is a compostable plastic. Yeah, great. So, big takeaway, if your organization is using compostable serviceware, but it's not making it to our facility, a commercial composting facility, then you're not doing the earth that big of a favor, because if it's winding up, let's say that paper straw is winding up in recycling, it might be considered contamination. If it's going to go to the landfill, it's probably going to put off methane gas. So just something to keep in mind. Commercial composting is really key. Where does it all go? Okay, so when you recycle, you put it in a bin and then whisk off to who knows where. But the cool thing about composting is that it just goes right up the street to Ashland, Nebraska. We take that stuff and over there we process that into nutrient-dense soil. As you can see, mist rising from this pile of composted material. And then gardeners and farmers, landscapers around our community use that and spread it around our community, add nutrients back into the soil, and it makes a real difference here, and it's the 360 economy right in front of our eyes. So it's really incredible. Okay. Glass recycling. Save this one for the last stream to talk about. Glass recycling is pretty easy. Bottles and jars only. Please, no light bulbs or mirrors or window panes or stuff like that. Just bottles and jars. Please, no liquid or caps. Pour the liquid out. Shards are fine. If it's broken up glass, we don't care. Labels on the bottles, keep those on. That's no problem. So that's glass recycling. Super simple. Okay, myth. Recycling is too confusing. So why even try? Well, the reality is that there's an easier way than most of us have been taught, and most of us haven't been taught anything. So let's talk about implementation. Okay. On our website, hillside.solutions/quickstart, we have a guide. This is like the 101 for dummies right here, okay? So just follow this. And so this is how you sort of start a program off in your office. So step number one is you want to choose the containers you're going to collect your materials in, okay? So there's, depending on the size of your organization and what services you're prescribed to, it's upwards of 6 different containers, okay? And what you want to do is the colors you want to get, green is for composting, black is for landfill, and blue is for the recycling streams. So if you're going to go home and see your green recycling container, you're going to go, what's going on? Someone made a mistake with the city of Omaha with that. I'm letting you know that the national standard that has emerged is blue for recycling, black for landfill, green for composting. Okay, so now you know, and we all have to commit to that because the more that we get familiar with those colors, the easier it's going to be for us to participate in separating our stuff the correct way. Now, the actual color for energy bag is orange, a hefty energy bag, and glass is associated with an orange hue as well. But what I find is that it's hard to locate orange containers that you can purchase. So what we say is it's easier just to get anything that's a recycling stream, you just do blue across the board. Another thing we want to keep in mind, when you're setting up those containers, let's say in your break room or wherever, it's important that you couple them together. So that is to say, if you have one container recycling, on this end of the office and another one on that end of the office, usually what happens is that some person somewhere is going to just see a trash can, and no matter what they got to throw away, it doesn't matter what's supposed to go in there, they're just going to throw it away and they might contaminate it, okay? So if you can bring that stuff together and it's clearly marked, then you're going to cut down on contamination. That's a good thing. Number two, you basically, when setting up these programs inside your business, your organization, you want to just assume nobody knows how to do it the right way, okay? Gone are the days of just slapping on a recycling logo on some container and saying, you guys got it, right? You know what to do. Because it turns out most folks don't know how to do the recycling the right way, okay? So that's why you have to have big, simple, easy to understand posters on everything. So we have 3 resources on our website, all right? And the first one is something we've developed specific to the Omaha market with approval from First Star, which is the folks that are going to take your commingled mixed material, okay? You can download it. I suggest laminating it. It's 11 by 17. Put it right above your container. Put one on the container too. Make it super simple for everybody. Step 3 is you got to figure out which liners you're going to use, which bags you're going to use in each of those containers. So you have some different options. The main thing is that when it comes to the recycling streams, nobody really wants plastic bags inside those totes or dumpsters. You can use plastic bags in-house to collect that stuff, but you got to dump it out like we talked about earlier. When it comes to landfill, please, plastic bags. Keep that stuff contained. That's a good idea. When it comes to the composting stream, you can do compostable bags, and that makes it super simple and convenient for everybody, but you don't necessarily have to. You can use plastic bags if you want to. We just don't want it in our container, or you can not use a plastic bag or a compostable bag and just rinse out your containers once you're done. Up to you, okay? Number 4, this is really key. Once you've sorted it the right way in-house, you're going to make sure it gets to the back of house where the dumpsters and totes are at the correct way so that when we come and pick it up, the right things are in the right place. So as you can see from here, you have black for landfill. There's glass goes in its own container. Compost goes in its own container. If you're doing dual stream, paper and cardboard go in its own dumpster. Metals, plastics, and energy bags go in their own dumpster. Or if you're doing single stream and totes, metal, plastic, energy bags, paper, cardboard go in all one. Okay? So we have if you're doing composting, we have an instructional video on how the bag system works with that. Let me back up. All right, so for those who are using our composting service, we have a double bag system inside those totes that we use. And so you can watch this video to learn about how that works.
Hey there, this is Hillside Solutions, here to tell you about your new dual bag system with our composting program. So how it works is that you'll see two bags on the inside of the container. The top one is a compostable bag, the bottom is a black plastic bag. When you've filled up your container for the day or the week, we recommend tying just the compostable bag together to the best of your ability. Doesn't have to be perfect, but this is a really important step because if you've had issues with smells or bugs, this will greatly help mitigate that. If you haven't had issues, then don't worry about it. So next you'll see how we set the containers. First with the black plastic bag, then the compostable bag on top of that. The idea is that the black plastic bag gets replaced as needed. Hopefully it lasts a while the compostable bag gets changed with every pickup. We've gotten some feedback from you, shout out to the people who took our surveys, that the compostable bag is slipping inside the container occasionally. So we have been adding screws to the sides to hold that in place. Based upon some other feedback, we're now going to place those screws under the lip of the container instead of on the side, as you see in this video, because, well, we don't want people running up against that. So we'll be paying attention to their feedback and make changes as needed, but that's it for the quick summary. We really appreciate you being a composting partner and being flexible with the changes, and please reach out if you have any questions.
All right, myth. Recycling forgives my consumption. What do I mean by that? So that is to say that, hey, I like drinking water from water bottles, and it's okay because I'm going to recycle that water bottle, so no big deal, right? Wrong! You have to consider the upstream waste it took to produce that water bottle and the downstream cycling problem. So what do I mean by that? So just to produce a water bottle, it takes a bunch more energy and materials to make that happen, okay? And then with plastics, you can't just turn a water bottle into another water bottle because every time you reuse plastics, it downgrades the material a little bit each time. So a lot of times water bottles go to things like saran wrap, okay? So it's always better just to figure out how not to use water bottles in the first place and use a reusable container. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is the reality is that we can't recycle our way out of this problem we have in our society right now because of the upstream and downstream waste. The solution in the future to this conundrum we're in right now is really, yes, we got to recycle, yes, we got to compost, but the big thing is reducing overall, reducing that 4.3 pounds of trash we go through, reusing the materials that we're consuming, and refusing some materials too, like saying, hey, I don't want the straw, or I don't want this, or I don't want that, I don't need it. So that's the future, reduce, reuse, refuse. And so here's the 5 R's, the chart that you can go off of, and the hierarchy is starting at the top, refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. So that could apply to sending stuff to a landfill or composting for rot. Okay? And the way that you can kind of figure this out is just look inside your trash can and see what are the things that our organization produces the most of most often. And are there other things we can do to get around this? Maybe we don't have water bottles and we can just instead, everybody brings their own containers from home. We have a refilling station or whatnot. Whatever that means for you, figure out there's ways that you can just produce less waste overall. So, if you need some more resources, want to dive in deeper, again, go to our website, hillside.solutions/quickstart. All the stuff we covered is there, and there's a quiz too you can take to make sure you retain the information. And if you need any help, we're here. We want to make sure you do it the right way. So reach out with questions to hello@hillside.solutions. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you got a lot of information out of it. We appreciate working with you, and here's to the future.